Ladies and gentlemen, good greetings. So today I would like to start with the introduction of what are the opportunities of intra-trade or African intra-trade. So what are these opportunities of intra-African trade? Before we get started, I would like to give a story of, you guys remember in July 2020, the government of Kenya had imposed an immediate ban on imports of brown sugar and sugarcane, suspending all the pre-shipping approvals and import permits until further notice. I believe this ban was imposed with the aim of reviving the sugar industry by protecting it from foreign imports. So from the cabinet secretary at that time, Peter Munya, he did this because he said that the import had rendered the Kenyan mills uncompetitive. However, these measures were implemented without any prior warning, creating a chaos in trades at the border, and particularly for the Ugandan sugar industry, for which Kenya was the main export market. In fact, the time of its announcement was around 150 trucks were filled with some of 6,000 tons of Uganda sugarcane, which was supposedly to have crossed the border at the Kenyan border point. So suddenly, they were met by the custom officers at the border. They were told to drive back to Uganda by the border officers. This did not only affected the Ugandan traders because they got significant losses, because Kenya was their lucrative market. So in this confusion which was created by this sudden change in policy, caused irreparable losses, as many traders who had provided the down payment of their drivers and the logistic providers, which they could not recoup. So this kind of losses for the Ugandan sugar industry was estimated to be around $50 million. And I believe the Ugandans said they are going to retaliate. So the problem which was encountered here is what we call the impact of non-tariff barriers. So, what is a non-tariff barrier? A non-tariff barrier, they are these of cumbersome customs procedures that they don't really make sense, but they're just there. So there is a difference between tariff, non-tariff measures, and tariff barriers. So tariffs are taxes paid on the goods when they are imported across borders, while non-tariff measures, these consist of all measures that affect trade other than the tariffs. And the non-tariff barriers are defined as unnecessary, restrictive, non-tariff measures. So the barriers are the unnecessary, restrictive, non-tariff measures. Before moving forward, it is important to understand the definitions of and the differences between tariff and non-tariff measures and non-tariff barriers. So tariffs are tax paid on goods when they are imported across border. Each country applies a different tariff rate to different product based on the product code assigned to them. Tariffs are generally imposed for three reasons. One is to protect the newly established or ineffective domestic industry from the foreign competitors. The other reasons why they do impose this tariff is to protect domestic industries from foreign dumping, which occurs when a foreign company charges a price that is the export of the product is lower than the cost which it sells in its own domestic market. Third is to raise revenue for the government. In Africa, the average tariffs of import from other African countries are highly variable, ranging from 0 to 33%. Non-tariff measures. Non-tariff measures consist of all the measures that affect the trade other than the tariffs. So we have several types of NTMs, which we call it non-tariff measures, under the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. So the government participation in the trade and the restrictive practices tolerated by the government. So that is an example of an NTM, which is the non-tariff measures. The other one is customization and administrative entry procedures. These are measurements that are just there, but they're not necessary. Also, we have the technical barriers to trade, TBT. We have sanitary and sanitary measures. We have specific limitation. We have charges on imports and others. So NTMs are designed to fulfill a certain legitimate regulatory interest with which trades are required to comply. Safety and security, vehicle safety checks, environmental health, like the quarantines and other things, the consumer protection and the trade policy. Lastly, we have the non-tariff barriers. So NTBs, not NTMs. Now, what are the NTBs? These are defined as unnecessary restrictive non-tariff measures. NTBs they're not fully or in any way legitimate. They do not fulfill any legitimate regulatory purpose, but rather they consist of the overwhelming, cumbersome, inefficient, or unreasonable application of legitimate non-tariff measures. So examples of NBTs include excessive paperwork, with multiple parties requiring documents that are similar or overlapping in content. Next, there are the long queues at the government offices responsible for stamping the paperwork. Another example of NTBs, the non-tariff barriers, include the office hours kept by officials fail to coincide with the actual timing the goods arrive at the border. Officials are unnecessarily heavy-handed in order to solicit payment for special treatment. So we get those kind of things where the police are the officials at the border, they're trying to harass you, let's say any other government organization. Also, the other thing, we have officers at the port and the border who interpret applicable rules and procedures differently, creating confusion and adding to cost. So we have to be very informative when it comes to doing your business. So there is no shortcut, because remember, each and every person is interpreting their own they're interpreting in their own terms. So the other thing is the various body agencies that fail to coordinate their control, resulting to duplication of control activities, delay, and additional costs. So correction and appealing mechanism may not exist, and they are very troublesome. So note that there is no correction and appeal mechanism. So what happens in the border stays at the border. So we are faced with these as main problem by African traders. And some of the main problems or the non-tariff barriers that we African traders we do face is, number one, what we call cross-border procedures, inadequate facility, inefficient border posts, and lack of transparency. So these have been most of the common reported non-tariff barriers by the African traders. So as an SME preparing to trade in Africa, it's crucial that you develop contingency plan to deal with variety of potential NTBs that you might face. In the next section, we're going to look at some of the ways in which you could address these NTBs at the source and the work to minimize the risk they pose to your business. So, what can an individual enterprise do? Number one is to plan and prepare your shipments properly. That is one of the mechanisms that you can do. The other mechanism is that in accordance to the Annex 5 of the Protocol on the Trade in Goods, under the African Continental Free Trade Area, which has established a continental online mechanism to report, monitor, and remove non-tariff barriers to trade. It was launched actually in 2019. The mechanism allows the trader to file a complaint about a specific non-tariff barriers that they have encountered during the process of trading goods or services across the border. It aims to improve the transparency in the identification and the tracking of tariff barriers, facilitated to monitor these NTBs and to ensure shorter time frames for the resolution of the reported and identified NTBs. This mechanism feature or technical feature are notification of NTBs, monitoring and processing NTBs, settlement and disposal of NTBs. You can access this mechanism here. And I would like to leave you with some food for thought. I would like for you just to list what are the effective strategies that SMEs can use to deal with or prepare to overcome NTBs. So kindly drop your thoughts on the comment boxes, and it's been a pleasure actually walking you through the opportunities of intra-African trade. So stay tuned, more segments are yet to come. So once again, I'm your host, Benson Machariam. Thank you for tuning in. Bye-bye.